Last time on this channel, we found the exact places where Texans stopped showing up, where the migration that built this entire state fell to a 20-year low. A lot of you asked the obvious follow-up question: if the people stopped coming, what happens to the price of a house? Well, the new numbers are in, and in a handful of Texas cities, the answer is brutal. Here is the strange part. If you glance at the statewide figure, you would think nothing is wrong. But zoom into the right cities and you find homes that have quietly shed tens of thousands of dollars in a single year, and one famous Texas city that has lost close to a quarter of its entire value from the top. That city was, just 3 years ago, the single hottest housing market in America. Everyone wanted in, and people paid almost anything to get there. Today, it is one of the fastest falling markets in the entire country, and I am saving it for number one, because the size of that drop and how close to home it might hit for some of you is going to genuinely surprise you. So stay with me, because we are counting down the 10 Texas cities where home prices are falling the fastest right now, city by city, all the way to the single biggest drop in the state. And I am going to name the exact Zillow and Redfin numbers on every single one, so you can check me. Here is the honest part, and I am putting it right up front. Statewide, this is not a crash. Redfin puts the Texas median sale price at about $342,000, down under 2% over the past year. Across all of Texas, that reads as a cooling, a correction after an insane run, nothing more. But a statewide average is a liar. It blends a city that is barely moving with a city that has lost a quarter of its value, and it calls them the same thing. The average tells you Texas is fine. The map tells you something very different. So today we are throwing out the average and going one city at a time, counting down to the single steepest drop in the state. So what is actually pulling these prices down? 4 forces hitting at the same moment. The first is the one we covered last time: migration. The flood of people moving in from other states slowed to the weakest trickle in 20 years, so the wall of out-of-state buyers that used to bid these homes up just is not showing up the way it did. The second is overbuilding. During the boom, builders threw up entire suburbs on the bet that the growth would never stop. And now that inventory is sitting there unsold. The third is mortgage rates stuck near 7%, which quietly priced out a huge chunk of the buyers who fueled the frenzy. And the fourth is the silent one: insurance. Texas has some of the fastest rising home insurance costs in the country, and that extra monthly bill eats straight into what a buyer can actually afford to offer. Put all 4 together and you get a countdown that looks like this. Coming in at number 10 is Houston, and I am starting here on purpose, because Houston is the exception that proves the rule. Redfin puts the typical Houston sale price at about $324,000, and out of every major Texas metro, Houston is the one that has basically held its ground over the past year. Prices here are close to flat. Houston never got the vertical price spike that Austin did, because it has far more room to build and a cheaper starting point, so there was simply less air in the balloon to let out. So why open a collapse video with the one big city that is not really collapsing? Because Houston is your baseline. It is the calm, shallow end of the pool. Everything from here gets colder, faster, and steeper, and by the time we reach number 1, you will understand why one Texas city lost a quarter of its value while Houston barely flinched. Number 9 is San Antonio, and this is where the ground starts to soften. Redfin shows the San Antonio median sale price around $260,000, down under 3% over the past year, with homes now sitting on the market far longer than they did 12 months ago. On its own, that is a soft landing, and I am not going to oversell it. But San Antonio is drowning in new listings, and a wave of apartment and new construction supply landed at the exact moment buyer demand cooled off. When supply floods in and buyers step back, price is the thing that gives. San Antonio is the first domino. The next 8 are where it gets loud. At number 8, we go to Dallas, and here is a stat that catches people off guard. Of all the big Texas metros, Dallas is posting the sharpest year-over-year price decline. Redfin puts the Dallas median around $375,000, and the drop is steepest. Not in the heart of the city, but out in the northern suburbs that built the most aggressively during the boom. Communities like Frisco, Prosper, and McKinney poured foundations for a wave of buyers that suddenly thinned out. Now that fresh supply is just sitting there and prices are bending under the weight of it, hold on to that idea about overbuilt suburbs, because it is about to become the entire story. Number 7 takes us into the suburbs of Austin, and this is where the numbers stop being polite. Round Rock, just north of Austin, has watched its typical home value slide. Zillow puts that value at about $413,000, down close to 5% in a single year, with homes now taking almost 2 months to go under contract and a growing share of sellers slashing their asking price just to pull in an offer. Round Rock did everything right during the boom. It was affordable, it was close to the jobs, and it filled up fast. But it filled up on the assumption that Austin would never stop growing. And if you saw the last video, you already know exactly how that assumption ended. Number 6 is Plano, back up in the Dallas area, and Plano just earned a national headline that no city wants. When a major housing study ranked the 10 American cities with the biggest one-year drops in home value, Plano landed at number 5 in the entire country. Zillow puts the typical Plano home value around $500,000, down about 5%, which works out to nearly $30,000, shaved off the average home in 12 months, sliding from roughly $528,000 just a year earlier. And if Plano is number 5 in America, you can probably guess that a certain Texas city is sitting even higher up that same list. We are getting there. We are halfway home, and if this is the kind of breakdown you find useful, the real numbers instead of vague headlines, it is worth sticking around for the top 4, because that is where the real damage lives. Number 5 is Pflugerville, on the northeast edge of Austin. Zillow puts the typical Pflugerville home value at about $370,000, down 7% over the past year. 7% might not sound like a collapse until you are the family that bought at the peak, put 20% down, and just watched that entire down payment quietly evaporate on paper. That is what these numbers feel like from the inside, a slow leak in the single biggest purchase of your life. And Pflugerville is where the drops cross over into double digits from here on out. Number 4 is Kyle, south of Austin, and now we are firmly in double-digit territory. Zillow puts the typical Kyle home value at about $340,000, down nearly 10% in a single year. Kyle was one of the great affordability escape valves of the boom, the place families drove to when Austin priced them out. But when the expensive thing you are a cheaper alternative to starts falling to, you fall even faster, because your whole selling point was being the discount. Kyle overbuilt, demand cooled, and the discount got discounted. A large share of sellers here are now cutting their price before the home moves at all, and even then, it can sit for months. At number 3, we have Cedar Park on the northwest side of the metro. Zillow puts the typical Cedar Park home value at about $515,000, and that value is down more than 10% over the past year. Sit with that for a second. On a $500,000 home, 10% is more than $50,000, gone in 12 months, quietly, without most owners noticing until they go to refinance or sell. Cedar Park is a desirable, well-regarded suburb with strong schools and easy access to the tech corridor. None of that stopped the slide, and homes here are now sitting for weeks longer than they did a year ago. That tells you the force behind this is bigger than any one neighborhood. Number 2 is Leander, and Leander posts the steepest one-year drop on this entire list. Zillow puts the typical Leander home value at about $457,000, down more than 15% over the past year. 15% in a single year. Leander sat at the very edge of the Austin boom, the last stop on the growth train, the newest construction, the biggest bets on endless demand. And when the music slowed, the last stop on the train is the first one to empty out. It is the same pattern every single time on this list. The homes built last farthest out and the biggest bets about a future that never arrived are the ones falling hardest now. Leander is the sharpest single-year fall in the state of Texas. And yet somehow it is still not number 1. Because number 1 is not measured by a single year. It is measured by how far a city has tumbled from the very top. So before I say the name, think back to the promise I made at the start, the city that was America's hottest housing market just 3 years ago. Number 1 is Austin. 3 years ago, Austin was the most talked about housing market in the country, the city everyone was fleeing to, where homes sold in a single weekend for tens of thousands of dollars over asking. Then it peaked in the middle of 2022, and it's been sliding ever since. Zillow puts the typical Austin home value today at around $500,000, but the number that matters is not the past year, it is the fall from the top. Measured from that 2022 peak, the typical Austin home has lost close to 25% of its value. Roughly a quarter of it gone, which is well over $100,000 sliced off a typical home from a peak near $550,000. Austin is also buried in more homes for sale than almost any market in the state, a mountain of inventory with fewer and fewer buyers left to absorb it. And that same national study that ranked Plano number 5 in America ranked Austin number 4 in the entire country for home price declines, the hottest market in America, now one of the fastest falling anywhere. This is the part that connects everything. When the buyers thin out in a city that built itself for growth that would never end, the price is the thing that finally tells the truth. Now, I want to hear from you because a lot of you are living inside these numbers. Did you buy in one of these Texas cities near the peak? And if you did, are you holding or are you quietly thinking about getting out before it slides any further? Or have you been a buyer waiting on the sidelines for exactly this moment to arrive? Tell me your city and your situation down in the comments. The split between the people who feel trapped and the people who are circling is the most honest map of Texas real estate right now. And if this is the kind of breakdown you want more of, the honest one, with the actual Zillow and Redfin figures instead of clickbait, then subscribe to Texas Pulse and hit that like button because we track this market every single week and it is moving fast. Here is where this story goes next. Falling prices are only half the danger. Because in a handful of Texas towns, the real nightmare is not that your home lost value. It is that you cannot sell it at all, at any price, because the buyers have simply vanished and the listings are stacking up with nowhere to go. There are 10 Texas towns right now where sellers are effectively frozen in place, stuck with homes they cannot move, even after cutting the price again and again. And the reasons behind it are going to surprise you. That is the next video. And after everything you just saw about where the money went, you are going to want to know whether your town is on that list. I will see you there.